It's called the Cyclone Global Navigation Satellite System, or CYGNSS for short, and this constellation of microsatellites is able to pierce thick clouds and rain to access wind speed and better understand hurricanes. Designed and built right here in San Antonio at Southwest Research Institute, these tiny satellites are the size of a suitcase but pack a powerful punch. And now, NASA has extended this important program 2 more years as they have a stellar performance record.
8 microsats. They're about the size of a lunch tray, plus some solar arrays that are folded out, unfolded. And there's 8 in the same orbit plane, 35 degrees inclination, so that means that we fly over all the tropics where the hurricanes are likely to be.
Together, the 8 satellites pack a punch as they circle Earth in an orbit that continually studies the hurricane zone.
A lot of satellites fly in a polar orbit, so if you have the equator, they'll be flying around like this, and as the Earth rotates, they'll get one slice, one track down. But for CYGNSS, we're flying at an inclination that's just a little bit inclined from the equator, and we've got 8. So as we're going around we're covering this whole area in the tropics so much better than a spacecraft that's in a polar orbit. The whole purpose of the mission is to measure wind speeds and then feed those wind speed measurements into these large models that are run on supercomputers to forecast the storm track and the intensity when it makes landfall. And because there's been a lot of improvement in the track prediction but not in the intensity prediction, we were really hoping that the CYGNSS data was going to improve that intensity forecast.
Understanding the wind surface speed of a hurricane will enable weather forecasters to more accurately predict the intensity of a hurricane, something that you routinely hear on television as a level 3 or level 4 storm.
So what we did is we went back and we took the 2017 data that we collected and we reran the forecast models and we compared that to truth, what actually happened. And we found that if you use the CYGNSS data, it's just one piece in all this other data that comes into the models, but if you add the CYGNSS data, it actually does improve the forecast for both intensity and track. For a relatively low cost, a little bit more than $100 million, we're able to build 8 spacecraft that are able to do, good NASA science. And this is unprecedented, really.
This is a life-size model of a CYGNSS satellite. Right here, this is it. What amazes me is you think of how small it is compared to big satellites that are up in space. Every inch of this satellite has a purpose, from the solar arrays to the instruments, and it's a combination of the engineering and the miniaturization of the electronics that are on board.
And you can see the solar arrays here, like I said, about the size of a lunch tray, plus the solar arrays extending out on either side. These actually deployed after launch. For launch, they were folded up and then they deployed on orbit. We received the GPS signal on the top antenna direct from the GPS satellites. We use that for navigation as well as for the science. And then down here on the bottom, we have these really sensitive science antennas. You can see these pick up the reflected GPS signal off of the ocean surface. So those have to be very, very sensitive because the signal is such a low-powered signal after it reflects off of the ground. It really comes down to the design and the miniaturization of some of the components that you need for any spacecraft. That's always getting smaller. The core electronics are getting smaller. But we only have one science instrument, and the shape of the satellite is not an accident. I mean, everything about this spacecraft is designed to accommodate these science antennas that you see. I mean, that's why we have this particular angle on the surface of the spacecraft, so we can get the right footprint of the antenna pattern on the ground. We've really made use of every little piece of real estate on the spacecraft, and that's all by design. We've proven, to NASA that we're able to do this reliably and, deliver on time, on budget, and do great science with the spacecraft we build here.